Welcome once again to The Icons. I'm your host, Rick Horrow. Each month we sit down for a long interview with one of the big names in the world of sports. This month, one of the biggest with one of the most iconic franchises in the history of baseball. Los Angeles Dodgers president, Stan Kasten. Let's get started by going inside the icon. Stan Kasten was born in 1952 in New Jersey, the son of two Holocaust survivors. He grew up in New York City, graduated from New York University, and earned a degree from Columbia Law School. Kasten began working for Ted Turner in Atlanta in the early 1970s and was named the GM of the Atlanta Hawks in 1979 at the tender age of 27. He became president of the Hawks in 1986 and won NBA Executive of the Year his first 2 years in the position. Also in 1986, Kasten was named president of the Atlanta Braves, where he helped assemble the team that won a division title 8 times in the 1990s. He spent 4 years as the head of the Atlanta Thrashers, 5 as president of the Washington Nationals, then joined a group that included Magic Johnson in purchasing the Los Angeles Dodgers in 2012. Kasten became team president when the sale became official and has been there ever since. Our discussion started with a reflection on his early years in sports, working for another icon, Ted Turner.
I moved to Atlanta right out of school, and things just started happening as they do around Ted Turner. Our first day of my being down there, I attended a meeting that was a part of the process of Ted buying the Hawks. He had already owned the Braves for the previous year, so he was getting deep into sports, and we closed that transaction on the Hawks, and a year later, there was some upheaval in the Hawks front office, and he tapped me to go in and help the guy who was going to be a fill-in GM. And a couple of years later, they tapped me to fill in for the fill-in guy. And when kids ask me, you know, how do I get into sports? How do I get my first job? I tell them a lot of things, but I do say, you can't do it the way I did it, because that can't happen. That's like a lottery winner advising you how to win the lottery. You know, it can't be done, except to prepare yourself for the opportunities that happen. They do happen. I think good luck doesn't get enough positive PR. We hear a lot about bad luck, but there are opportunities every day, and it could happen almost always unexpectedly. That's certainly been my career. I never set out to be a GM. I never set out to run 3 teams. I never set out to run and own the Dodgers, but I think I was prepared at every turn to capitalize on the opportunities that presented themselves.
And your unique skill set of being able to put everything together and be the logical person to then take the next step with not 1, not 2, not 3, but very many teams is legion. You were lucky enough, and by the way, this is a shameless plug to sell my book. You're just kind of a pawn.
Everything we do is shameless, Rick. So.
Thanks. Yeah, I kind of appreciate that. But you wrote in here, and I quote, opportunities often present themselves when you least expect it. Often don't give them away. Good luck doesn't get enough positive press. It's around us all the time. Kind of what you just said, but I would add, I guess, by asking, luck is fine, preparation is fine, but you have to put in the work. And you have to know what you're doing, and then luck is just kind of help you close the deal, I assume.
Well, I think preparation speaks to that. Yeah, and preparation is more important than luck, because, as you know, luck is the residue of design, right? And with enough preparation, you can make your own luck. You certainly can. I think you need breaks along the way, but if you put in the preparation, if you put in the work, then you can make the right opportunities happen. In my case, I became a GM through weird circumstances, and because there was nobody there right at that moment. But I was so far behind the curve. I had no natural constituency in the NBA. I was not a former player. I had not been a team executive for that long. So I had to work really hard because, I was the youngest GM ever. But I knew, and I said this on that day, it would take nothing for me to become the youngest ex-GM ever. And I just was not going to let that happen. When you have 29 other teams of really smart, really dedicated, really talented people working 24/7 to beat your brains out, it's hard.
not only were you the executive of the year consecutively in 88, I guess 87, 88, but you had 4 straight 50-win teams with Dominic Wilkins and the Hawks. Some would give credit to you. I prefer to give credit to Dominique, but I guess you kind of did it in tandem. Is that probably right?
That's fair. He deserves his share of credit. Yeah, that's why there's a statue outside State Farm Arena because of it. So yeah.
And there's no Stan Kasten statue, right? There's a Dominic Wilkins statue.
No, there isn't. But I think of the whole arena as part of my DNA since I was responsible for building it, and it turned out great, and I'm very proud of that.
So the segue to the Braves was interesting because as that was the kind of second team, and I guess maybe the message on this one is make sure you hire key executives and maybe get out of the way. And John Scherholz ought to have some credit for the Maddox, Glavin, Avery, and Schmaltz staff that was largely responsible for 14 straight division titles. Does that team or that organization get enough credit?
I don't know. It gets a lot of credit for the consistency, which is not easy. I remember once there was another GM whose team was about to win their division for the second year in a row. And what he said publicly was it would be really special to win this year because that'd be twice in a row. And that's hard. And, he's exactly right. It really is hard when you have 29 other teams of really smart, really dedicated, really talented people working 24/7 to beat your brains out. It's hard to stay on top, to defy gravity, because I think gravity is working on all of us in terms of baseball standings. And to defy gravity for 14 years is, I think, a tremendous accomplishment.
Well, and I'll say it. You don't have to say it, but I'm sure the Atlanta fans, appreciated you, but got spoiled. You wake up one morning and it's like 14. Yeah, here it comes. What have you done for me lately? Right?
I tell a story. A friend of mine who is a president of another baseball team was in town to deal with Coca-Cola. And he said, and it was the day after we won our 9th straight division. And he says to himself, well, if there's any city in America that it would be safe to listen to sports talk radio, it would be here in Atlanta. And he turns it on and he could not believe it because that day's theme was, if they could only get rid of Kasten, Scherholz, and Cox, then they'd really be good. So, yeah, that just comes along with what we do. And as I always tell people who work with me, I remind them of the immortal words of Hyman Roth in that hotel room in Havana. This is the business we've chosen. And so that's all part of it. We had the most beautiful stadium ever, but we had to make it a 21st century experience because more and more that's what our customers want.
If you look back on your triple header in Atlanta, and then we'll go to Washington, would you say that it was really incredibly difficult because it was hard to juggle day-to-day responsibilities and prioritize, or it was absolutely a piece of cake because you knew how to do all of these functions and they were more similarities than differences with the teams?
No, I can't say it was easy. To the extent anything got done, it's one of my main basic tenets. It was done because we had great front offices. I thought all three had great front offices and they do the heavy lifting. I can set the parameters and the general guidelines, but the front office does the work. I would say it's interesting that at least on the talent side, there is almost no overlap among the three sports. And I put the three sports scouting operations together for a day to have a session, a summit, where we could talk about these things. And there were almost no lessons to be learned in scouting from one sport to the other. Right. But you can do business things. And the problem for me is that, in baseball, there's a time when you trade players. There's a time when you sign players. There's a time when you sell season tickets. When you're running three teams, it's every time of the year, every day, because the calendars just don't overlap. And so that was tricky. But again, it was the people in the front office that managed it. It wasn't just me.
Fast forward to 2006. Let's get out of Atlanta. And we're now celebrating the birth of the Nationals. What was the hardest part of that deal? Putting the group together with the learners, getting the stadium done, beating other expansion candidates out, remembering baseball kind of held that team and you had to do a deal with Major League Baseball, combination of all that?
I think the stadium was not a hard thing because that was done before the team got up for bid. The team was not going to come to Washington unless Washington had delivered a stadium. So that was done. We made some tweaks, some important tweaks to the stadium, but that was not a problem. I would say going through the crucible of 8 teams or more bidding, and it was a set price, you had to be chosen once you agreed to the price. And I was with one group until at the end it was clear my group standing on its own wasn't going to do it. But then baseball thought, wow, Stan and some of his guys would be a perfect fit with the Lerner family. I had met the Lerner family, and we actually got along well when we sat down to talk about it. They agreed, and I agreed it was a great fit, and so we came together. But the whole, my gosh, was it a year, 18 months? It took a long time to go through that process, and that's long to do anything. I do know when I won, when our group won the award of the team. It really felt like winning an Olympic gold medal, or like winning a World Series, because to do that for that long, come out on top, that was a whole event in and of itself. And then we got to work building the franchise.
Peter Guber, but Mark Walter and Magic Johnson with the Dodgers, and you put that deal together, and that was your deal. And the one thing that I guess people want to know is the bid ultimately came out published publicly at $2.15 billion. Which was 25% above the next highest bidder. What did you see in that, and why did you go so high?
Okay, a couple of things I want to say there. First of all, that 25% figure, remember, there never was an auction. We made a deal with Frank the day before the auction was scheduled, so the auction was called off. So don't you believe that the second guy would have been behind us at all, because the second guy was Steve Cohen. All right, so that's number one.
That's why we're doing this, by the way, so you can explain. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, okay. It was Mark Walter has the best answer to that. Why did we pay so much for it? The answer is because it was worth so much more. I mean, and that was our assessment. And we didn't know exactly how things would fall into place, but we thought, here's what we were buying. We were buying an iconic brand in the second largest city in America, in the media and entertainment capital of the world, at a time that the brand was down on its luck. TV contract was expiring when rights fees were exploding. That's an awful lot of good things, good dynamics happening at the same time. And we thought with a little bit of hard work and effort and expertise, we could make that pay off. And that's what has happened for us.
The good thing about people who have the financial ability and the vision to spend large amounts of money to buy a significant trophy community asset is that they're going to do what it takes to support it and make sure it survives. And getting to, quick segue, the Dodger Stadium renovation is an exact example of what we're talking about here. Most proud of that, right? But talk a little bit about how that was done and what the end product looks like.
Well, look, I've loved Dodger Stadium my whole adult life. The first time here was on my honeymoon, which is how I remember my honeymoon. But it's the most beautiful place ever built to play or watch the game of baseball. But when you look at a stadium that is now 60 years old, was 50 years old then, and hadn't really been changed. In fact, a lot of things hadn't been touched since it opened. It needed a fair amount of work, just in terms of back of the house stuff, in terms of facilities for the players, but really in terms of front facing fan services. So look, we had the most beautiful stadium ever, but we had to make it a 21st century experience, because more and more that's what our customers want. It is never going to be a new stadium, but I think now it offers as I said, 21st century experience. We expanded concourses. We renovated bathrooms. We expanded the concession areas. We lowered parking in the early years. We did all the things that fans really need and expect more and more, no matter where they go. So we did that. in our first off season, we got it all done before the second season started. And 2 years ago, we finished most of the customer renovations when we added this amazing 2.5-acre center field plaza. We now have a front door to Dodger Stadium, which we never had before, with all kinds of games and amenities and food and fan interaction areas. And when you enter Dodger Stadium, you are greeted by a statue of Jackie Robinson. And in June of this year, it will be matched by a statue of Sandy Koufax. That's how you're greeted when you enter the front door of Dodger Stadium. We're very proud of that. And these are the most resilient and loyal fans that baseball has. It's why since the day we got here, we have led baseball in attendance every year.
First World Series in 32 years, more to come. Obviously, the dollars that you spend on payroll, you feel are worth it.
Yeah, well, we always thought that if we do the things correctly, if we take the building blocks that I always talk about, the customer, the product, the brand, which is the team, the stadium, and our community relations program, our fans will reward us for that investment. And that's exactly what has happened. These are the most resilient and loyal fans that baseball has. It's why since the day we got here, we have led baseball in attendance every year. We've made Dodger Stadium the most heavily attended sports venue in the world. And these fans appreciate the effort we put in. The payroll is just one aspect of it, because we also lead baseball, I think many people would say, in player development and generating players through the farm season. That's one of my bedrock principles. It was in Atlanta, it was in Washington, and it certainly is here. The Dodgers invented scouting. The Dodgers invented player development, and we've returned to a laser focus on that, and that has paid off tremendously in the support of our fans.
2020 Sports Humanitarian Team of the Year, the 50 ball fields, that issue and the Dodger way, whatever that means, but it means a lot to you and it means a lot to the organization, must really emanate from the heart from you.
It's incredibly important. When I talk to corporations, I emphasize that third pillar more than any other because it's often overlooked. But our connection to our community in the corporate setting, that translates into brand. What does your brand signify to people? That's incredibly important for us. We have this 60-year history of being a part of this community. And so during the pandemic, when we were able to have the largest COVID testing center in the world, later the vaccine center, in the middle of that, we had a voting center. We distributed over 3 million meals to food insecure families. This is what the Dodgers are. It's why our brand remains strong. It's why our fans support us even in downtimes. We haven't had many downtimes since this ownership has been here, but they would be here because the Dodgers are such a part of the fabric of this community. And without our work in the community, that would not be the case. Then we'd just be one more item on a shelf, buy it or don't buy it. But no, we're something that fans here feel passionate about. I'm very proud of the recognition we've gotten for our work off the field. And listen, let's remember, a lot of that is the contribution of our players who are themselves engaged in this community, who it's as simple as autographs, but it's more. It's also showing up at schools to do reading sessions. It's showing up at grocery store openings and showing up at little leagues. Our players are fully invested in. I talk to them every spring training on the first day of spring training about why this is important to them. And it doesn't hurt that I have a partner who may be the all-time greatest role model for how to parlay a successful playing field experience into a career long of success in business, and that's magic. It does not hurt that he's there when I'm making that point. Being here in LA is the most fun I've ever had. It's the best thing I've ever done. It's also the most important thing I've ever done.
Is there one tipping point, inflection point that you look back on and say, yeah, that was it?
Well, I don't know what you mean. I've had many things of which I'm proud of. I've won 2 World Series. Some would say 2.5, but those are both those are both significant moments in my life. But the recognition that we get from people that we are all in across the board, that we are not just a team on the field, but we constantly strive to upgrade our stadium. We constantly work in our community to be able to do all of those things, and people recognize that. So I'll say this: I've lived in great cities and great organizations, Atlanta and Washington, fantastic. But being here in LA is the most fun I've ever had. It's the best thing I've ever done. It's also the most important thing I've ever done.
There are very few people in sports who have experienced what Stan Kasten has in his career. Speaking of the Dodgers, their AAA affiliate is in Oklahoma City, also called the Dodgers. They spent last year talking about fan engagement and their ballpark. One of the things they did was to create a relationship with KissCam, who's had nearly 1 billion views on TikTok and has become known around the world. Their contest produced 9% engagement rate on average and up to 11% in a few of the games at the end of the season. An example of minor league and all of baseball reaching for creative marketing to be shared with everybody in the sport. That's all for the Icons this month. I'm your host, Rick Horrow. We'll see you next month on the Icons.